Serious? Parents who adopted a child and regretted it. What happened? My parents adopted a little girl when she was 3. She was diagnosed with RAD or reactive attachment disorder when she was around 10. She never was able to connect with her biological mother, parents, siblings, family, or friends. The signs started to show just before she hit puberty. This once sweet, smart, loving little girl was completely different. In a span of 3 years, she began to pathologically lie, steal, cheat, run away from home, threaten to kill her siblings, hoard food, seek out attention from random older men online. She even attempted to kill our grandparents. Our parents didn't know what to do and they were scared of a little girl. They tried everything. Therapy, counseling, medication, encouraging social interaction, limiting social interaction, public school, private school, homeschool, encouraging freedom and individuality, restricting internet and media access, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, spending extra time with her, etc. Nothing helped. Everything finally came to a head in a short amount of time. First, my parents woke up one night to find her next to their bed, staring at them, holding a knife. Second, she tried to kill our ailing grandparents by putting household cleaner in their drinks and bringing it to them, then putting baby oil on the floor hoping they would fall and crack their head open. Her words. Lastly, she threatened to kill one of her siblings and sit on them until they bled to death. My parents ended up having to take her to the state hospital. It was the safest thing for both this little girl and the rest of the family. She needed more help and therapy than they could ever provide her in an outpatient setting. My parents knew that after this unfolding of events, they would never be able to bring her back home. It was eventually decided that the best move forward would be to relinquish parental rights. They needed someone else to advocate for this little girl because they had to think about the safety of the rest of the family while giving this troubled child the best therapy options available. My parents struggled with this decision and still do. They feel like failures. They often ask if they had done everything, tried everything. They love this little girl, their child, and just wanted everyone safe and happy. She is still at the state hospital but is doing better. She has contacted my parents and even said she understands why they gave up their parental rights and she knows they love her. She still has outbursts and struggles with everyday life. As hard as it was on the family is happy and safe. This, now a teen, girl is safe and getting the treatment she needs. My parents adopted a 4-year-old girl when I was 7. She had been sexually abused by her father for 3 years before being put into the foster care system. When she was adopted, she was way too inappropriate, having been abused so young and literally having no way of knowing how to control herself, resulting in her biting, hitting, scratching, and trying to be inappropriate with me and my older brother, who was 16. She introduced me to intimate acts when we would play alone as children. Me being so young had no idea what we were doing. This scared me for years because I couldn't come to terms with what happened, if it was my fault or not, or if I could ever talk about it. All of this was followed by 15 years of her lashing out every way possible. She became a pathological liar and would accuse no less than 8 people a year of having assaulted her. She then started doing drugs, everything from coke and acid to lost a ton of weight, started sucking off every guy at her high school, and even got caught fricking a kid in the front pew of a newly built chapel when they thought no one was around. But the worst of it all was that my parents never acknowledged any of her problems, not the drugs, sex, or lying. So when she started lying about things I had done to torment her, do you know what my parents did? They sent me to an out-of-state rehab behavioral adjustment facility 2 days before my 17th birthday, and I stayed there for an entire year. I had zero contact with anyone but my parents, and I had to pretend to be kind to them after what they did when talking to them on the phone, just so the counselor could see I was improving, and I could go home when I turned 18. I have never smoked, drunk alcohol, been promiscuous, or been violent, but for some reason they took all the blame of my little crap sister's actions and dumped it on me. I missed all but the last quarter of my senior year. I spent 12 months away from my girlfriend of 5 years. Miraculously we are still together. She is a wonderful woman for loving me through all of this. And when I got home, my parents were still disregarding the fact that she had any problems. I moved out 2 months after I got back and I haven't spoke to any of them since. It's been almost 2 years now. I know the original prompt was about parents' regret, but I regret ever having her as a sister. She stole so much more than valuables. She stole the last year of my youth. So, not parent, but brother of 2 adopted siblings. My sister we got from the orphanage when she was 6 months. She never really had any major issues other than nightmares from about 1-2 years old. My brother we got when he was about a year old, and apparently the orphanage he was in was pretty horrible. They didn't feed the kids on a regular schedule, no real caretaking, etc. So he ended up with what's called attachment disorder. Basically he was freaking horrible from 3-6 or so, would hit my parents, physically resist, misbehave for things as simple as family photos, going to lunch. They had weekly meetings with teachers due to him flipping lights, hitting other kids, got cops called on my parents several times for perceived abuse, etc. This went on for a while, obviously, until they found a psychologist who accurately diagnosed and recommended treatment. That treatment consisted of, when he had an outburst tantrum, my parents would basically hold him without letting him go. Cut forward a year or so of this, weekly or sometimes daily holdings, and he straightened up and basically learned that he wasn't going anywhere and wasn't going to be abandoned anymore, and the outbursts stopped. Needless to say, while these were occurring, my parents somewhat regretted adopting my brother, but since he's been reformed, so to speak, he has got much better and things have improved dramatically. My mom adopted my cousin when she was 14. Her dad was not in the picture and her mom had become a junkie. At first it was exciting. Me and her had always been inseparable growing up. Everything changed when she moved in, sadly. She started to become very jealous of me and I'd hear story from my friends that she was convinced I was taking boys from her. Her room became a mess. She went from straight A's to failing everything and getting in trouble at school. Things go to the point where my mom had her committed for a few months because she had started cutting herself. At 18 she eventually joined the carnival and ran away. It's been 10 years and I wish things could be different. I've forgiven her, but my mom found out she was telling other people we treated her like crap, and that broke my mom's heart. I'll speak on behalf of my mom. She adopted several of my cousins when I was younger because if she didn't, they would all go to foster homes and be split up. She didn't want that. Some of my cousins turned out okay, and they went on to lead their lives. Some of them my parents had a lot more trouble with, running away, telling teachers lies so they could be reported to CPS, stuff like that. Long story short, once they were grown, they came to my parents' house and basically blamed them for everything that went wrong in their lives. After that, my parents had no further contact with them ever again. My mom said if she could do it over she would have let them go into the system because it wasn't worth the stress and anxiety of trying to raise so many kids at once. My uncle and his wife decided to adopt years ago. He's the most righteous person I know. He'd always ponder things and tried to not be unfair. After finding a shy 12-year-old boy and carefully following all the protocol, spending lots of time together, therapy, etc., the adoption was final. Then, weird things started to happen at their home, like real fricked up stuff I don't feel like listing. But the final one was after about a year he was watching the news with my aunt and it was reporting a son that had murdered his parents and he casually spilled, "See, that's what we do with parents that give us trouble." I know a lot of unspeakable things must have happened to that kid before the adoption, but my aunt was absolutely terrified of him after that and they made the hardest decision of their life to return the kid. My uncle was absolutely humiliated in court during the process, which I get. We are dealing with real kids. It's not a joke. But then, they ended up finding another 11-year-old who was a great match. They are very happy now. Although I'm not sure if that was the right thing to do. I don't know what I'd do myself, so I try not to judge and show compassion instead. They already went ahead when they decided to adopt B. Went for older kids in a difficult range that were not Caucasian baby girls. I adopted a kid with my, at the time, wife due to her inability to conceive children. A couple of months later my wife tragically died in a car crash and I was left alone with this kid. I work 60+ hours a week and unfortunately I had to take him back because I felt he deserved better. A few years later I found out he turned to a life of crime because no one else ever adopted him, and it was my understanding that this is how he decided to act out his emotions. It really hit me hard and to this day I regret not doing more to take care of him. Those several months I had with him and my wife was absolutely the best time of my life. Friend of mine became pregnant in high school. Another high school friend's parents agree to adopt the baby. Fast forward, adoptive parents clearly see there is something not quite right with him as he reaches toddler age. He has fits. He is molesting other kids at school. He is not maturing at all. There is a whole list of other complaints they never shared that they dealt with. Over the course of several years it worsens and they are told by doctors that his birth mother very likely drank and or did drugs while pregnant and the result is this kid's impairment. She swore upside down and backwards when the baby was adopted she didn't touch anything and when confronted years later still denies it. This kid is now 17 and will never live unsupervised. He will never have a mental capacity of anything more than a 10-year-old at best. These people adopted the baby being told he was healthy and she took care of herself during pregnancy. Now they have an adult child to look after for the rest of their lives and they are already in their late 50s. A co-worker of mine adopted 2 siblings, 9 and 5. The state failed to disclose the full level of their neglect and abuse. They didn't know the older child had been molested and that the younger child was destructive and physically combative. My co-worker wouldn't have adopted them if she'd known the full truth. She's been doing her best to get them the help they need but she can't even leave her husband alone with them because the eldest lies and makes crap up. I think the youngest has stopped the physical attacks and is no longer punching holes in walls. My grandparents adopted my cousins after their dad killed their mother, tried to kill them, and killed himself. They already had 3 kids of their own, and now had 6 kids and themselves in a 3-bedroom home. There was some arrangement where my grandparents could tap into what was basically a trust fund for money to support the kids, but they didn't really bother with it. Eventually though, they took out some of the money to add an extra bedroom to the house. Reminder, we are now talking about a 4-bedroom house for 8 people. As soon as the youngest kid turned 18, they turned around and tried to sue my grandparents for the money. The amount of disrespect they had for the people who kept them out of the foster system and raised them as their own absolutely disgusts me. Not a parent, but a brother. My aunt, adopted by my grandparents, called my mom one day and said, "Hey, I'm pregnant. Either you take it or I'm having an abortion." My parents said they'd take it. A few years later we find out he's dyslexic, severe ADHD, and mommy had been drinking. Fetal alcohol syndrome. FAS. Kid is a piece of crap. Loved setting things on fire, smearing crap in the bathroom, kicking animals, and being a manipulative little frick. He's 2 weeks from his 21st birthday now, already been in and out of rehab several times, stolen plenty of crap from too many people, and has cost my dearly beloved parents too much of their lives. He found his birth father and lived with him for a while, so we've essentially removed him from our lives, though my parents are the ones he calls when crap hits the fan. Several times a week. We're all exhausted. He is, and will forever be, a burden on society. He will never amount to anything positive. I know that for a fact. I have zero hope for him. We all regret adopting him, so goddamn deeply. I am a patient, loving man, but I do wish that he had been sucked down a hospital drain instead of ruining our lives for decades. I'm pretty sure my grandparents regretted adopting my aunt. They got pressured by the local priest because after 2 years of marriage they hadn't conceived yet. Knowing my grandfather, it wasn't for lack of trying. They went out and adopted my aunt, and a few months later my grandmother got pregnant with my dad. Around age 15 it began clear my aunt had serious psychological issues. Examples: she started freaking out about the government spying on people through the television. Or she'd have depressive episodes and she'd start seeing bugs crawling everywhere. Turns out she's bipolar, and it ruined her life. She became impossible to be around and was mean to people when she didn't take her meds, and she didn't take them often. My grandfather didn't talk to her for a decade at least, and my uncle still doesn't talk to her. My mom told her to go frick herself once, and she's the sweetest person in any room she's in. Before my aunt got married, my grandmother had a serious talk with the soon-to-be son-in-law, and told him it would be a very bad decision to have kids with that woman. They did anyway, and my 2 cousins are complete frick-ups. One didn't finish elementary school and won't talk to his mom, and I'm not too sure about what happened to the other one. I know he spent his youth in various programs for troubled kids, and last I heard of him 4-5 years ago he was prostituting himself to older gay men for drugs at the age of 15. Now she goes from one idiot boyfriend to the other so she can use them for financial support, and I see her about once a year. It's a sad story. While I was growing up, my mother's best friend adopted a child from Russia. It ended up being a total freakazoid nightmare. This poor woman's story has completely closed my mind to the idea of adoption forever. She adopted a girl of about 5 from one of Russia's orphanages. The only thing anyone knew about her for certain was her first name, and that her mom was a drug addict prostitute. This little girl is the most freaked up, broken person I have ever met in my entire life. Early on she showed serious behavioral problems. Tiny rage. Dude. Tiny, violent, scary rage. Screaming like a banshee. Zero fricks given. I stopped over to my mom's place around Christmas time. Mom always loved the tradition of going to cut down the tree, so she had invited her friend and her adopted daughter. She had asked me to come help so we could use my truck. No bigs. So anyway, the truck wasn't a king cab. We had to take a car too. Mum wanted adult chat her friend, so the kiddo came in my truck. I tried to make kid talk with her but she was silent and appeared intimidated. Okay, whatever. I thought it was normal kid stuff. We go chop down the trees, put them in the truck, and go home. On the way home, this little basket case puts her hand on my thigh and starts rubbing it. The kid is goddamn 8. I nearly had a meltdown inside. I mean, first thing is I removed her hand from my leg, but then WTF do you do? This crap is fricked. Made it home without incident but whatever. Very freaked out now. The kid started acting normal again. I basically just made sure to never ever be placed in an alone situation with the kid ever again, and try to avoid visiting my mother if those two were over. Tidbits about the daughter. Once burned their house down. Got pregnant with twins at 12. Age problem. Never finished high school. Turned 18 and ran away forever. No idea where she is now but my bet is dead. My mom's friend describes it as the worst thing she's ever done. The first thing she would fix if she had a time machine and a total waste of time that has emotionally ruined her. So my mom has been a social worker and has worked with kids for as long as I can remember, and she really wanted to adopt this girl that she had known for years. So every so often, she would come stay with us, just to test the waters and see if she might be a good fit to actually live with us permanently. Long story short, she ended up stealing a lot of money from my parents and stabbed me in the leg with a fork. She didn't stay with us very long. I adopted my 14-year-old nephew because he was a juvenile delinquent but was super smart and I thought he just didn't have the support or money in a place so poor. We were too late. Had him for 4 years during which he never tried hard enough to get what he wanted. Phone, TV privileges etc. and ended up stealing from a kid who was a leukemia survivor with a profound limp amongst so many other things I'm not even gonna go into. We gave him every opportunity all the other kids had, the clothes they had, every chance to fit in and find his own way without always being an outsider. He went to the best HS in the country and could have gone to any nearby college easily. He wanted to be an engineer. I wasn't really equipped to be a mother so the toll it took on me was phenomenal. He moved out after he was 18 but before graduation. Graduated only because of a stupid rule they just haven't re-evaluated yet. Moved back to the crappy place he was from. Never had a pay stub. Always sold drugs. Guy got brainwashed and is now exactly where he was if we wouldn't have taken him to begin with, except now he can read and enjoys it. The money, stress, effort, mass confusion. I'm never doing that again. We were too late. My family is friends with the family that adopted a 14 or 15-year-old. They are super Christians. I remember one of them told me they would rather be dead so they could be with God, and their mom told them their dog didn't go to heaven because it didn't have a soul. I always felt like they adopted the kid because it was the Christian thing to do and they thought of themselves as the perfect Christian family. Well, after about a year he started acting out by lighting fires and bullying the other family members. So they sent him back. I don't blame the kid. Going from the orphanage to that household must have been a massive cultural shock. They got his name legally changed when they adopted him, so he will have that to remember them by. We know 2 couples who adopted and regretted it. My cousins adopted 2 sons. The first got heavily into prescription drugs and was rebellious. He couldn't hold a job and was in and out of trouble. He died a suspicious death at a young age. His brother ended up having significant learning disabilities. He has poor impulse control, inappropriate behaviors, compulsive lying, and is not capable of making good decisions. He can work a basic job, but is unable to make good decisions, so he would spend all his money on a girl he's not actually friends with who asks him to buy her concert tickets via Facebook. Or he would be willing to quit his job to hang out with a girl who asked. He is very easily swayed. Their parents divorced and neither talk to the living son. He doesn't want to talk to them either. Our other friends adopted a Russian-Ukrainian child around 1990. I don't know if it was an international adoption or local. He had serious anger issues and was in and out of institutions, weed, jail or juvie, all his life. He took off and they have no contact with him. They have a biological child also who turned out fine. I'm adopted and my life is great. However, this certainly does happen. My parents took a girl in when I was 5 and she was 12 if I remember correctly. Her mother had drug issues, so my parents took care of her on the weekends to begin with. This went on for a few years and then her mother got her act together and I didn't see her for many years. Fast forward 6 years. Both her and her mother had started doing a lot of drugs. Social services contacted my parents and asked them if they could take her full time. They agreed. She had a lot of boyfriends come and go. One of them stole stuff and others were abusive. She was a sweet girl but made a lot of bad decisions. It all escalated New Year's 2000 when we came home to her boyfriend screaming and crying. Blood on the walls and a trashed house. My dad found her in her room with her wrists slit. I remember the blood and how mom ushered me and my sister into their bedroom to keep us from seeing anything. We took her to the hospital and she survived. After that we made her go through rehab and my parents weren't comfortable having her at our house anymore, so a new foster family was found. However, after rehab she really cleaned up her act. Today she is happily married and I have met her many times as a grown up. We are all really happy that she is doing so well now. We know a couple that adopted twins. One boy, one girl. By all accounts their mom was just constantly pregnant. The dad was on drugs, massive booze hound, so they needed a home at age 6. So they took them to lots of after school activities, gave them love and doted on them and they seemed fine. Fast forward to age 14 and the boy started behaving like an alley cat, staying out, drinking, taking drugs, while the girl got herself pregnant, not once, but twice from the age of 16. Seemed unable to get her head round birth control. Fruit don't fall far from the tree. I have neighbors who did just this. They adopted 2 twin girls who were brought over from Russia by a Christian adoption agency. They adopted them and quickly realized they were not equipped to handle the amount of abuse they had received before they adopted them and the emotion toll it took on the children. They were 6 or 7. After about 4 months they had to give them back. I don't know the logistics because they of course didn't really want to discuss it. They were extremely upset and missed them but knew they couldn't take care of them. My aunt adopted a child and it was by far the worst decision she made. My cousin was just not one of us. He stole, didn't finish high school, unemployed. My aunt had to support his life, his children and his baby mama. She used to be coolest onto all of us until she adopted him. My cousins adopted a girl. It was a while ago so I don't remember all the details, but she had a messed up past. She was around 8 I think, maybe a bit older, but I do remember she attacked my cousin, threatened her with a knife and slammed my baby cousin's arm in a sliding glass door so hard that the glass shattered. He was only maybe a year old. They had to give her up after that. Rare elephant strawberry like for good luck, ignore for 11 years of bad luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video.